Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to give my review of AEW's Forbidden Door 2. Starting off the evening, we go to our first match of the night. It is for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. It is Tanahashi versus MJF. Number one, I thought this was a great opening match for Forbidden Door 2. A back and forth matchup between Tanahashi and MJF, with Tanahashi keeping the pace of the match. Tanahashi then hits a senton off the top rope on MJF. MJF then gets up, hits a superplex on Tanahashi for a near fall. MJF then hits a forearm strike on Tanahashi. MJF then hits a shoulder breaker on Tanahashi as well for a near fall. Tanahashi and MJF both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Tanahashi applying a Texas Cloverleaf on MJF, but MJF breaks the hold. MJF then grabs the AEW title. Tanahashi then goes for a roll-up. Referee is distracted. MJF ends up hitting Tanahashi with the Dynamite Diamond Ring. Referee doesn't see it. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match, and still AEW World Champion, is MJF. Hats off to MJF for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a Owen Hart quarterfinal matchup. It is Satoshi Kojima versus CM Punk. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Kojima and Punk, with Kojima unloading forearm strikes on Punk. Kojima and Punk then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Punk mocking Kojima. Kojima then lands chops on Punk. Kojima then hits an elbow drop on CM Punk off the top rope. Kojima then hits a DDT on Punk. Punk then gets up, hits a running knee on Kojima. Punk then hits an elbow drop of his own on Kojima for a near fall. Kojima then gets up, hits a Koji cutter on Punk, as well as a brainbuster for a near fall. But Punk gets up, hits a GTS on Kojima, pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is CM Punk. Hats off to CM Punk for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have an announcement that on September 3rd, there will be All Out in Chicago. A couple of things I want to say about this, man. Number one, I was actually kind of surprised that they booked All Out literally right behind All In. All In, I believe, is the 26th or 27th of August. And there's only really a week build leading up to AEW's All Out Live, September 3rd, in Chicago, I believe. So, again, there's not much build for that pay-per-view. Like I said, I'm very surprised that they ended up booking All Out for September 3rd, being so close to All In. But again, I'll have more details for that pay-per-view leading up in the next couple months. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's for the AEW International Championship. It is Orange Cassidy defending the International Championship against Shibata, Daniel Garcia, and Zack Sabre Jr. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup with everybody involved, with Garcia applying a Dragon Tamer, but the hold is broken. Zack Sabre Jr. and Shibata both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Orange Cassidy hitting a Stundog Millionaire on Garcia. Garcia then gets up, hits Shibata with the title. Shibata then gets up, unloads forearm strikes. Orange Cassidy and Shibata then both get face-to-face in the ring, with both of them exchanging in the middle of the ring. Orange Cassidy then hits an orange punch on Shibata. Orange Cassidy then hits a beach break for a near fall. Garcia then hits a pile driver on Zack Sabre Jr., but Orange Cassidy ultimately picks up the victory in this matchup and retains the International Championship. Hats off to Orange Cassidy for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. It is Jungle Boy versus Sonata. I thought this was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Jungle Boy and Sonata, with Jungle Boy quickly applying a snare trap on Sonata, but Sonata quickly breaks the hold. Jungle Boy and Sonata both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Jungle Boy applying a skull end on Sonata, but Sonata breaks the hold. Sonata then hits a TKO for a near fall. Jungle Boy then gets up, hits a Poison Rana on Sonata. Sonata then gets up, hits a Poison Rana of his own on Jungle Boy. Sonata then hits a Shining Wizard on Jungle Boy, and then Sonata hits a moonsault off the top rope, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Sonata. Hats off to Sonata for getting the win in this matchup. After the match, Jungle Boy is walking up the ramp with Hook. Jungle Boy ends up turning heel and hitting a clothesline on Hook. And like I said, it looks like Jungle Boy is turning heel. Hopefully we get more information about what happened between Jungle Boy and Hook leading up to Dynamite tonight. Definitely looking forward to that. Hopefully we get some answers about why Jungle Boy attacked Hook after the match he had with Sonata. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Eddie Kingston teaming up with Tomohiro Ishii, the Elite, versus the Blackpool Combat Club. Shota Umino, Takeshita as well. It was a good match, man. Back and forth matchup between both teams with Kingston and Moxley both exchanging in the middle of the ring. The Elite, Kingston, and Ishii were keeping the pace of the match, with Page hitting a fallaway slam in the middle of the ring. Page then hits a shooting star off the apron on Takeshita. Claudio then hits a giant swing on Matt Jackson, but Ishii hits a brainbuster on Yuta, pins for the 3. And your winners of the match are Eddie Kingston, Ishii, the Elite, and the Blackpool Combat Club. Hats off to Eddie Kingston, Ishii, the Elite, and, Eddie Kingston, Ishii, and the Elite for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's for the AEW Women's Championship. It is Willow Nightingale versus Toni Storm. I thought this was a good match. A great showing by Willow Nightingale. Back and forth matchup between Nightingale and Storm, with Nightingale hitting a Death Valley driver off the apron on Toni Storm. Willow was keeping the pace of the match, but Toni Storm ultimately hits a Storm Zero on Willow Nightingale, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and still AEW Women's Champion is Toni Storm. Hats off to Toni Storm for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the IWGP United States Championship. It is Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. I thought this was a fantastic match. Back and forth matchup between Omega and Ospreay, with Ospreay keeping the pace of the match. Omega and Ospreay both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Ospreay hitting an enziguri on Omega. Ospreay then hits a shooting star press on Omega as well. Ospreay then slams Omega headfirst into the announcer's table. Omega's busted wide open. Ospreay then hits a V-trigger on Omega. Ospreay then mocks Canada. Omega then gets up, hits a V-trigger of his own on Ospreay. Omega then throws Ospreay into the steel steps. Ospreay is also busted wide open. Omega then hits a DDT on the steps on Ospreay. Ospreay then gets up, hits a Spanish fly on Omega. Ospreay then applies a shooting star press. Then switches it up and applies a crossface on Omega, but the hold is broken. Omega then hits 2 Snapdragon suplexes on Ospreay. Omega then hits a pile driver for a near fall on Ospreay as well. Ospreay gets up, hits a Liger bomb on Omega. Don Callis is here. Omega then goes for a one-winged angel. Ospreay then hits Omega with a screwdriver. Ospreay then hits a Stormbreaker for a near fall. Ospreay then hits a V-trigger again on Omega, but Ospreay then hits a one-winged angel on Omega for a 1 count. Omega and Ospreay then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Ospreay hitting a devastating Tyler Driver 91 on Omega, and then Ospreay ultimately hits another Stormbreaker on Kenny Omega, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and new IWGP United States Champion is Will Ospreay. Hats off to Will Ospreay for getting the win in that matchup and becoming the new IWGP United States Champion. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Minoru Suzuki teaming up with Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin, Sting, and Naito. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Darby and Minoru exchanging in the middle of the ring. Jericho and Sting then both exchange as well. Sting then applies a Scorpion Deathlock, but the hold is broken. Guevara then hits a Spanish Fly off the top rope. Guevara then goes off the top rope, hits I believe it was a 630 that he hit off the top rope on Sting through a table on the outside. It looked absolutely brutal. But Naito ultimately hits a roll-up, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Sting, Darby Allin, and Naito. Hats off to Sting, Darby Allin, and Naito for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of AEW's Forbidden Door 2. It is Okada versus Bryan Danielson. Number one, this match was awesome. I thought it was a great match. Danielson coming out to his old school Ring of Honor music with the final countdown, I thought was absolutely awesome. Back and forth matchup between Okada and Danielson, with Okada keeping the pace of the match. Okada and Danielson then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Danielson landing multiple yes kicks on Okada. Okada then gets up, hits a tombstone piledriver on Danielson off the ramp. Okada then hits an elbow drop as well. Danielson then hits a running knee on Okada for a near fall. Okada then hits a Rainmaker on Danielson for a near fall, but Danielson applies a label lock on Okada. Okada ends up tapping out, and your winner of the match is Bryan Danielson. Hats off to Bryan Danielson for getting the win in this matchup. Couple things I want to say about Forbidden Door, man, before I get out of here. Number one, it was a solid event. I always like these events that AEW puts together when they're working with New Japan. I think it's great for both parties, man. It gets, a lot of eyeballs on New Japan that a lot of people don't get to see, Okada and Sonata and those type of guys in the States. And it gets more eyeballs from AEW over in Japan as well, man. I think it, like I said, works out for both parties. With that being said, man, there was a couple things about Forbidden Door that I liked and some things I did not like. Number one, the Kojima versus CM Punk match. To be honest with you, I know a lot of people are not for CM Punk being back in AEW. But for what it's worth, man, what I will say about CM Punk, this was one of the best matches I've seen from CM Punk since he's been back. It was his first singles match that he's had in AEW since he's been back, going up against Kojima in the Owen Hart Tournament quarterfinal. With that being said, man, I think CM Punk did a fantastic job against Kojima. A lot of people don't know who Kojima is. But it made for a really good match for Punk. It was a great showcase for Punk, you know, being his first singles match back. I mean, past couple matches that he's had, he's been teaming up with FTR. So it's great to see CM Punk in singles action. But other than that, man, he kind of played off the crowd. I think, you know, that crowd in Canada, man, was absolutely awesome. Just the rain of boos that CM Punk was getting, and then you had some people in the crowd that were cheering for CM Punk. I feel like CM Punk really was playing off the crowd. I know a lot of people are saying that CM Punk is kind of giving off this, you know, 1997 Bret Hart, where a lot of people hated Bret, especially fans in the States, stuff like that. I don't think CM Punk is Bret Hart in 1997, but what I will say is that he's going to have mixed reactions, man, no matter where he's going to go. And the benefit of CM Punk is that All Out, I believe, like I said, is going to be in Chicago. So obviously Tony Khan knows what he's doing. And not everybody's going to agree with what CM Punk's doing and why he's back. You know, that's a given. But for what it's worth, man, the guy, he's a draw. He's going to bring eyeballs to the product. He had a great match against Kojima. And I look forward to what's going to happen next with CM Punk in AEW, and you know who's he going to challenge next? Is he going to go after MJF for the World Heavyweight title? We have no idea yet, man. But I thought it was a really good showing by CM Punk in that match against Kojima at the Forbidden Door. The other big thing, the announcement for All Out. All Out's going to be taking place September 3rd, I believe, at the United Center. I'm not against it, but what I will say is I'm not liking the fact that it's literally back-to-back between All In and All Out. I believe All In is at Wembley Stadium in London, in England, and it's April 26th or August 26th or August 27th, and then literally a week after that you got All Out. So the build for All Out is going to be very lacking leading up to that pay-per-view, because literally the first Dynamite after, I believe, All In is the go-home show for All Out. So they really did, you know, compact these pay-per-views together pretty much back-to-back. In August and September for All In and All Out. So I don't know how much build we're going to get leading up to All Out. But with that being said, you know, hopefully, you know, usually 9 times out of 10, the pay-per-views for AEW are really solid. So hopefully they can pull something out. It might be a lot of rematches stemming from All In. You know, I have no idea yet. But I just thought that was kind of interesting, the fact that Tony Khan and AEW booked All Out literally a week after All In. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. Jungle Boy versus Sonata. A lot of people don't know who Sonata is, and there's even some people out there that are not too keen on Sonata being the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Do I know a whole lot about Sonata? No, I don't. But what I will say is he's a solid champion. He's a solid competitor. Jungle Boy turning heel was probably one of the biggest parts of that match in its entirety. Seeing him turn heel and turn his back on Hook. To be honest with you, do I think it was the right thing to do to disband Hook and Jungle Boy? Honestly, I'm like 60-40, man. 60 no, 40 yeah. Because at this point in the juncture for both Hook and Jungle Boy, you know, could they have gone after the AEW Tag Team Championships? Sure. Because, I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, they don't really know how to book Hook at this point. Even though he's carrying the FTW Championship, he just went through all that stuff with, you know, Big Bill and Lee Moriarty and, Stokely Hathaway. And Hathaway's doing his own thing on Ring of Honor. Haven't really seen much of Big Bill and Lee Moriarty. I think they're being more shown on Ring of Honor. So I don't know what they're going to do with Hook. Jungle Boy, on the other hand, yeah, it'd be great to see him have a singles run. And I think we're going to get that now with him being a heel, which is great. But I don't, do I think it's too soon? Yeah, possibly. In my honest opinion, I think it might be way too soon for Jungle Boy to be, kind of going a singles run. In my honest opinion, I think they just broke up Hook and Jungle Boy a little too early for me. But that being said, it was a decent match between Jungle Boy and Sonata, with Sonata getting the victory over Jungle Boy and retaining the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Willow Nightingale. Willow Nightingale kind of took me by surprise, man. I think Willow Nightingale is really coming into her own. I think she's a great talent for the roster for AEW in that women's locker room. And she's really shown who she is as a competitor. And I have the utmost respect for Willow Nightingale. I think she's a really good competitor. I think the fact of the matter is that she could be multi-time world champion for AEW. She has the charisma. She has the in-ring ability. I think sky's the limit for Willow Nightingale, man. She's doing fantastic things right now. Obviously, she's the current New Japan Strong Women's Champion after the match she had with Mercedes Moné. I think there's a lot of things, a very high ceiling for Willow Nightingale, and it was a great performance by her at Forbidden Door 2 against Toni Storm. So hats off to Willow Nightingale for her performance against Toni Storm. The other thing I want to get into, man, and to me, honestly, it was the match of the night for me, was Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. For what it's worth, man, those guys walked out of that match, both legends, in my honest opinion. I mean, Will Ospreay is one of the best competitors out there in the world, hands down. And Kenny Omega, again, absolute legend, one of the greatest of all to ever do it, in my honest opinion. And these two guys tore the house down. There was a couple spots, during that match, I was kind of like, oh man, it might not be good. I think it was the German suplex, I believe, that Ospreay landed on Kenny Omega, where he landed on the back of his head. I was a little concerned about Omega after the match because he had to kind of be carried out by, doctors, and Michael Nakazawa came out to help out Omega to take him to the back. Hopefully Omega's fine. But man, you want to talk about one hell of a match. It was a great match between Omega and Ospreay. And to be honest with you, I'm not trying to take anything from Bryan Danielson and Okada, but I truly believe, in my opinion, that Ospreay and Omega should have been the main event for Forbidden Door 2. I mean, it was right in Canada. It was, Omega's hometown, his home country, and that place would have erupted. It was already erupted during this match, even though it wasn't even the co-main event or the main event. It was a fantastic match, and hats off to Will Ospreay for getting the win over Omega and becoming the new IWGP United States Champion. The other match on here is the six-man tag team matchup with Suzuki, Jericho, and Guevara versus Darby Allin, Sting, and Naito. The biggest thing I'm going to take away, two biggest things I'm going to take away from this match. Number one, this match, I felt like it was rushed, to be honest with you. Even the roll-up from Naito, I feel like their time was kind of running out in the match. And the other thing is Sting, man. I have the utmost respect for Sting. The guy's an absolute legend. But I think it's time for Sting to hang it up. And that might be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. He's a fantastic wrestler, man. He's a great competitor. He's had a hell of a career. I just don't think, what's really left for Sting. If I was Sting in AEW or Tony Khan, I would probably be booking Sting's retirement at Wembley for All In. That's exactly what what I would do. Whether it's a title match possibly against MJF or a tag match with him and Darby Allin, something, or maybe him passing the torch to Darby Allin. It's time, man. I think it's time for Sting to kind of, walk away. And who knows, maybe he'll still be, an on-air thing for AEW. But as far as in-ring wrestling capacity, I just think it's time for Sting to hang it up, man. And again, it might be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of Sting fans out there. I'm a big fan of Sting myself, but I can honestly tell you that with the way that things are going now in the wrestling business, and the fact that he's, Sting's up there in age, man. He's not like, in his 20s or 30s anymore. He's an old man. It just, I feel like I'm not going to say he's injury prone, but the way he wrestles and some of the stuff that happens in these matches, I mean, even that table spot that he had with Guevara, where Guevara hit that 630 off the top rope to the outside, putting Sting through that table, you kind of have to be careful with a guy like Sting, especially, he's got a bad back, he's got a bad neck, injuries that he sustained in WWE in matches against Seth Rollins, that took him out of WWE pretty much. So, I mean, you got to be careful with a guy like that. I mean, I have all the praise for Sting, but I honestly, in my honest opinion, I feel like it's time for Sting to hang it up, and hopefully maybe at All In, we'll get some kind of a retirement show, if you will, or a send-off for Sting. The other match as well is obviously the main event, Okada versus Bryan Danielson. Personally, do I think this match deserved to be in the main event? After watching the match, no. Absolutely not. If I was going to rebook this card, it would be Omega Ospreay main event and Okada Danielson as the co-main. If you're honestly asking me, Ospreay and Omega shut the house down for Forbidden Door 2. But the other thing I'm going to take away from this match is Bryan Danielson. Number one, it was great to see Okada and Danielson in the same ring together at the same time, competing in a match. Never thought that would happen. It's a dream match, and it was fantastic to see. The other thing that I'm going to say, that I found out as well is Bryan Danielson getting injured during this matchup. Supposedly, there was people saying that he fractured his forearm, that he's going to be out for 6 to 8 months, and then you had Brie come out and say that the injury is worse than they thought. So, again, is this the same situation that you have with Sting and Bryan Danielson? Now, do I think Danielson's going to go anywhere from AEW? No. And the reason why is because, A, he's a household name. B, he's a part of creative for Collision. And what better person to have as a part of your creative than Bryan Danielson? That guy knows exactly what he's doing. Even if he would decide to be an agent and scout talent for AEW, the guy knows exactly what he's doing, and what they're looking for as far as what AEW brings to the table as professional wrestling. So I don't see Bryan Danielson going anywhere anytime soon as far as being with AEW, but his in-ring capacity, we don't know, man. I mean, the guy's going through a lot of serious injuries, even leading up to his time in AEW, and he was injured last year, which was the reason why he wasn't on the first Forbidden Door show, because he was injured. I think he sustained a leg injury or something like that. So, I have no more updates about the injury. All I know is that according to Brie Bella, his injury is a lot worse than they thought. So, I mean, it's still yet to be seen what's going on with Bryan Danielson. But I feel like the injury kind of took a little bit away from the match between him and Okada, if you honestly ask me. But all in all, man, Forbidden Door was a solid show. It really was. Every time they put these shows together between New Japan and AEW, it's solid. And I said this multiple times, too, about AEW. AEW does have a lot of WCW tendencies. And I know there's some people out there that don't know anything about WCW, and there's some people out there that do. And a lot of people ask me, why are you comparing WCW to AEW? Well, I mean, it's kind of simple, man. If you look at the format and the layout of Collision, it has a lot of similarities to Nitro, in my honest opinion. You got the red and yellow, just like how Monday Night Nitro was. And then you have, obviously, AEW working with New Japan, and New Japan also worked with WCW back in the day and brought over guys like Fujinami, matches against Ric Flair. I mean, you had these special events that, WCW had back in the day where it was WCW versus New Japan Pro Wrestling, and a lot of New Japan talent came over to WCW to have great matches. One guy comes to mind, an absolute legend, is Jushin Thunder Liger. He had great matches while he was still, obviously with New Japan, going back and forth from Japan to WCW. The Great Muta, Masahiro Chono, again, absolute legend in New Japan. So there was an open relationship between WCW and New Japan, as well as now we have AEW having an open working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling as well. So there is a lot of similarities between WCW and AEW. And for me, I'm a big fan of it, man. I was a big fan of WCW growing up and what NWO did and what, WCW brought to the table, man. It was definitely different than WWE. Not saying I didn't like WWE. But, back in the day, obviously, if you were a fan of pro wrestling, it was great to see, you pop on the TV on a Monday night and you're flipping back and forth between Monday Night Nitro WCW Monday Night Nitro and Monday Night Raw. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan, and that's kind of what we're getting at now with AEW and WWE. And obviously, like I said, with all the stuff coming out with, Jungle Boy turning heel, the All Out show being presented September 3rd, I believe, at the United Center, which is literally a week after All In, and All In is going to be absolutely incredible, man. From what I understand, it's like 75 to 80,000 seats sold for this event, I believe, or close to 80,000 seats. It's going to be absolutely incredible in August for All In, man. It's going to be an absolute crazy show. Unfortunately, I don't think Bryan Danielson's going to be booked for that show due to the fact that he's injured, which is a shame. But all in all, man, it should make for a fantastic show at AEW's All In. But all in all, man, like I said, Forbidden Door was a solid show from top to bottom. But with that being said, I'm about to head out of here, man. Again, Forbidden Door, absolutely awesome show. But again, look forward to what's going to happen next with AEW moving forward, as well as the next pay-per-view, which is AEW's All In at Wembley, man. It's going to be absolutely incredible. But like I said, man, with that being said, I'm going to head out of here. But I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.